Good evening, everybody. This is Samuel coming to you live from the hot tub here in a bamboo-filled backyard in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And I'll stop with the puns and alliteration there and announce the last one that I could have kept going with, which is, this is Body Made of Stars for the new moon partial solar eclipse that has just gone down this morning in the sign of Scorpio. So for the next little bit, I'll be talking about the energy that is present in the sky today. A lot of people saying some not so nice things about this solar eclipse. The energy of Scorpio as a whole, and the other transits that are going on in the sky from this tropical Western zodiacal perspective. So let's just lead it off with everything that's going on. So the moon at around 1 a.m. this morning was, or actually even later, 6 a.m. this morning, was occulting the sun. It was blocking part of the sun's rays in this night here in the Western Hemisphere. So I guess it was daytime in Europe and Asia when they got to see this partial solar eclipse. And along with them, we've just completed the Venus star point, and Venus has entered right in tow with the sun. So it's really, the moon is blocking not just the sun, but also Venus, essentially, even though Venus is blocked by the sun in this Kazemi moment of her cycle. Along with them too, Mercury is not far behind, so it's really these four planets all right together. And what is all of these planets? These are essential ones. This is, the sun, our beingness, our outward appearance and personality. The moon, our inner life, our feelings, our emotional bodies. Mercury, our method of communication, and communion. The direction that we're focusing our research, our conversations, our connections, and then Venus, that beautiful, beneficent planet of romance and beauty and just all of the feminine arts and magic, which has just left her home sign of Venus, or home sign of Libra, and moved to the Mars and Pluto ruled sign of Scorpio, where she's a bit spicier. There's an intensity, there's a ferocity. Even though Scorpio is a water sign, it's often conflated with the fire element, and Scorpio, the den of secrets, the nest of snakes, the crypt, the underworld, the occult, the secret, all the magic that brings, lends just a very magical, mysterious, and potent air to this time of year every year, which will be felt especially intensely this season. So yeah, it's a great opportunity to go back to your practice. It's a great opportunity to connect with your ancestors. It's a great opportunity to delve into the shadow work that perhaps you've been neglecting in the summertime. As the sun's been out and we've been able to focus externally, it's like now the autumn is here in New York City, and as it is in much of the northern world, life moves more indoors. It becomes more of an interior and intimate experience. Yes, we socialize. Yes, we gather, and there's festivals, and today's Diwali, and happy Diwali to anyone who is celebrating. We find ways to overcome this darkness and isolation that our ancestors experienced more acutely when the world wasn't lit by electricity and there weren't planes or automobiles to get you from one place to the other, but if you wanted to get somewhere, you had to walk through the cold and the rain, So naturally this season became a more foreboding and darkened time when these myths and stories were formulated several thousand years ago. So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. It's honestly my favorite week of the year. One of the names that it bears is the thinning of the veil. It's said that this time in Scorpio, the first half of Scorpio, is when contact between the living and the dead is easiest, because the realms of life and of death are there's the thinnest veil between them. They're close to touching. And so, if you're in the place where that resonance is felt and practiced, such as Venice or New Orleans or so many of the great cities of Africa and sacred places along the rivers there, or Rio, or these Carnival kind of cities, these or the highlands in Mexico, where the Dia de los Muertos is an eternal tradition, or New York City, in that this melting pot of so many of these cultures I just mentioned, where the excesses of the American empire sort of get turned in on themselves and become art and become reverence. And it's just such a profound time to do that work of connection, reconnection, to honor your own ancestors, to acknowledge the traumas that reside in human lineage as a whole. I've hinted at it numerous times in my recent written reports, but also I've spoken about it in years past, that I received a teaching in my early 20s about the nature of All Hallows Eve and All Souls Day, All Saints Day, and that process as it correlates to a remembrance of the destruction of Atlantis, when so many millions of humans, of Atlanteans, lost their lives all at once. So it's said that on the 30th, after much deliberation and secret warfare, the decision was finalized that the destruction of Atlantis would happen the following day, and the continent would be subsumed by the sea, whether that's through bombs or volcanic eruptions or, the other methods, earthquakes, of cracking the plate that it was sitting on and sending it to the floor. On the 30th, that mischief night that we celebrated as kids. And then the 31st is All Saints Day, and that's when the enlightened masters and teachers of Atlantis and their schools and their communities fled, having foreknowledge of the event that was to come, and they left in boats to eventually found the Maya or the Olmec, in Central America, the Egyptians along the Nile, in the Eastern Mediterranean, the Indus Valley civilization in modern-day Pakistan and India, and perhaps several others, the Xi'an Chinese Yellow River civilization perhaps too, and all of them coming from this common root, different schools from Atlantis that left before the destruction commenced. And then finally, All Souls Day, the Day of the Dead, November the 1st, was the day that the event itself happened. And in a flash, imagine the most devastating earthquake or hurricane. Imagine an entire continent of people, being destroyed in a single day. And so that left a mark, even though that was many, many thousands of years ago, and it's kind of the official records of it are written out of history, because erasure is just a part of what empires do. They erase the past so they can rewrite it in their own image. And as they say, history is written by the victors. So we lose the archaeological evidence, we lose even many of the stories, and yet it persists. The myth of the deluge, which is not a myth, is a memory. And it comes around this time of year, and so we can acknowledge and have some reverence for all that has come before and all those ghosts. And why do we dress up like dead people on Halloween? Why do we dress up like skeletons and bugaboos of all sorts? It's to acknowledge these ancestors, from a long time ago, but also the ancestors that were maybe doing the same ritual when it was their time around with the ball. And it's like that beautiful Coco, that Pixar film that so lovingly depicts the family altar in Mexico. And how if we acknowledge and remember our ancestors and speak their names and keep their memories alive and in our hearts, and tell their stories, their spirits are able to come to us and assist us and be with us and be close to us, so this is a triple down kind of time for all of that, because not only is it the Days of the Dead and the eclipse, or the All Hallows season, it's eclipse season. It's this only happens once every 9 years for an eclipse to happen in Scorpio, and it's a south node eclipse, which is about the past, so this only actually happens once every 18 years. And the eclipse portals are always times when souls leave this plane in droves, and also when energy and souls and ideas and revelations enter this plane in droves. It's because we have a constant connection to the sun and the moon, and we're caught in between, and it's always we're receiving their energy, their vibration. We're protected from the deep space by them. But when the eclipse happens, which is a statistical impossibility, that we have a sun and a moon which appear 99.99% the same at apogee in the sky, that's already evidence that this planet is something a little bit more than an accident. And anyhow, so eclipses are possible, which is already mind-blowing, but when it happens here and now, it's like that circuit between the sun, earth, and moon is momentarily disrupted. It happened for 5 minutes this morning, and it's like, I always find in this new, now 4-week period that has initiated, because it'll be this new moon, it's the coming full moon, and then it'll close with the following new moon, which will actually, I think, be in Sag by then. But another partial solar eclipse with a very full lunar eclipse coming in between on November the 8th. This is a time for, people to go. People who have passed, for their spirits to be able to go. I had an experience. My father passed away when I was 17, and he was not in the best of health, physically, mentally, spiritually, at the time of his death. And for several years, I was visited by him in my dreams throughout the teenage years and into my 20s. And that version of my dad did not know that he was dead. He was there thinking he was alive, commenting on my progress, trying to be helpful. I'm a pretty nice guy, flawed man, but he loved me and my family, and the world and music and many other things. And it wasn't until I was working with one of my teachers, Maestro Manuel, at a ceremony on Halloween one year, in, I believe, 2015. So I was 24. Can't believe that I got to all this stuff so young. I had a ceremony for him and did Olympia for him with Manuel and released his spirit. And my mother, not knowing that I had done this ceremony, she's since come to be more understanding, but at that time I was very much, under wraps, as we often are, earlier on with my spiritual practice. She called me the next day and she's like, I felt like this house was haunted by your father, and now he's gone. And it's been that way ever since. And she gives credit, and so do I, to Maestro Manuel and to that lineage of teachers and elders that he represents and that he carries. So yeah, if you have any ancestors in your line that feel like they're haunting you, or that their spirits could use a release and a kick on the butt, or more like a loving hand, to help them up, this is the time to do it, and we all have that in our own ways. So yeah, that's the magic of Scorpio. Get your costumes ready, get your candles out, set intentions and break through. It's not just about letting go, it's also about calling in, as these new moons often are. It's a great time to make a list of your aspirations, goals, dreams, targets, for this next lunar cycle, which will take us to the end of eclipse season. Pray for a vision. It's a mystical time. And meanwhile, speaking of this kind of goals and aspirations and prayers, Saturn went direct on Sunday, just as my lovely partner Mackenzie arrived in my arms here in Brooklyn from BC. And and Saturn's been retrograde since June. You might have felt your career stalling out. I certainly did in some respects. And, you know, this is a time where now Saturn, the gears start turning in the right direction, you know, and we get to kind of tow in the catch that we've made from the deep, you know, and bring it on board and see what we've got from all this work that we've put in this summer on ourselves and on our projects, and maybe take an upgrade, you know, new position, a new salary, a new job. These things are very much in the cards as Saturn completes his cycle in Aquarius, and I graduate in my class of fellow Saturn and Aquarius kids. We graduate our first Saturn return, as well as people, 28, 29 years older than me, graduating their second Saturn return on March 5th. So we're coming to the end of this 2+ year Saturn and Aquarius journey. And there's a lot to say about that. You know, there's a lot that we've learned, a lot that we've suffered. It's going to be a long time until Saturn is in his dominant position again. And for me, you know, there's a lot of upside to a weakened Saturn. Saturn will enter Pisces and be in the domain of Neptune and Jupiter, you know. And speaking of that, Jupiter is coming back on Friday to finish his journey in Pisces. He's been retrograde in Aries for a while. And this is an amazing time to call in blessings, abundance, you know, dreams, visions. He'll conjunct Neptune. He'll, rain down blessings. Literally, if you're in a land where there's drought, it's like you can hope with reason, astrological reason, you know, for rain. And yeah, Jupiter and Pisces, I feel like it was blunted a little bit in the springtime, you know, by some more Aquarian machinations and Capricorn machinations of the governments. It was kind of when they started this whole like inflation scam and the war in Ukraine and these other, you know, very dangerous and very anti-life kind of moves that dampened the beauty and excitement that we should have as a collective during the Jupiter and Pisces phase. And maybe this time we'll get more honest experience of that, you know, and get it more like we had it when Ken's was born in 1998, when Jupiter spent a year in Pisces. And from what I remember of that and what I know about history, it was a pretty damn good year. Not too much bad happened. Some good things happened. It's pretty abundant and pretty creative. And so yeah, Jupiter and Pisces happening on the 28th, and finally on the 30th, Mars turns retrograde in Gemini. So we're, you know, a third of the way through Mars's journey through Gemini, because it's gone up, then it has to go back for about 2 months, and it's going to go forward again for 2 months. And this is, it complicates communication, you know. We got to lean into this scorpionic Mercury and Venus and Sun stuff to cut to the heart of the matter, you know. Mars and Gemini, you know, there's a little deceit, there's a little backhanded compliment, you know, there's a little trickster in, you know, the huckster, you know, not the just the good trickster, but also the dark trickster energy about Mars retrograde in Gemini. And so, you know, when coupled with Saturn and Aquarius direct, this would form the most challenging part of the current configuration. And, you know, these two maleficents in air signs, it's like, clear the air, you know, we want to get the economy right. It's not that, Cynthia, it's not that it's at odds with the Gemini energy. It's more that when it goes retrograde, there's, you know, this, and also with it, you know, being conjunct, or rather being trine to Saturn and Aquarius in the late degrees of Aquarius for the next few weeks after it goes retrograde, there's like a conspiratorial energy between the two of them, you know. And so Gemini, the lord of short travel, it's like you might experience delays, high gas prices, the more fuckery from the WEF cats and their gang, and, you know, some maybe some bad results in the upcoming November elections, whatever. I don't know if there's a good result. I don't really given up on the Democrats, and the Republicans are not, any better at all. I like to cast protest votes for the Green Party and what have you, and Vermin Supreme. But yeah, so those two form a pretty complicated aspect. See, when you have a Maleficent in its domicile or in its powerhouse, it's not doesn't make things easier. It amplifies the influence. So say Mars or Saturn, as it's been transiting for the last several years through Capricorn and then Aquarius, it's like, yeah, Saturn is in its power there. Is that a good thing? Maybe for the babies that are born at that time, they're extra powerful. But for the scene, the zeitgeist, it means that a Maleficent is in its most powerful position. And Mars, this journey is a lot shorter, but it's still, a Maleficent is in a powerful position, and will feel its influence. Of course, the bright side, Mars in Gemini, is that it's not a violent deceit. It's a conversational one, and maybe you can even get ahead by using word magic and, playing your own games with Mars and Gemini, and painting great pictures. Mars is a creative force, it's the explosive projectile, so paint, write, draw, rock out, turn up the amplifier, turn up the reverb. So, that's I would say how to work with Mars and Gemini is like let the brash, bright, fiery, creative side play. Gemini, Castor and Pollux is of course they're the two twins, and one holds a paintbrush and one holds a sword. Or sometimes it's one holds a lyre and one holds a sword. And it's very much the two sides of Gemini, the warrior and the artist, the magician, the king, and the power behind the throne. I'm grateful to be a Gemini sun. And yeah, grateful to have that Scorpionic Pluto. Find Scorpio in your chart. See what planets are there, what aspects are being activated in your own journey. Tune in, check in. If you ever need a reading, I've given a lot of them over the last few years. I get better every time. And I like to think that it's able to really help some people. And I also make sure to offer them always on a sliding scale, where no one's turned away because they can't afford it. I honor myself and do take payment from those who can, but if you think you benefit from a reading, just reach out and we'll work something out. Yeah, Scorpio rising, that's fun. Of course you're such a rebel. Gemini, Scorpio. Anyhow, onward and upward. You live in a body made of stars. Love you all so much. Oh yeah, hot tubbing.